Evaluation. Standardized tests. Many of us know a thing or two about standardized tests, and we've experienced them a bunch. We have different feelings about them. But right now we're going to go over the different types, considerations, and things you want to keep in mind to make good ones. So, types of evaluations. Criterion referenced, self-referenced, and norm referenced. They're all quite different. Criterion reference, the work is graded on comparing students' work to a standard, not to one another. Self-referenced, it's comparing a student's work to his or her own past performance to see growth. Norm-referenced is grading based upon comparing students' work to other students. The NCLB and standards have forced a little bit of movement towards criterion reference test, although students are still pitted against one another. SATs, on the other hand, would be always norm-referenced because you're comparing yourselves to other people. So here's a neat side to see a little bit of the different distribution. A norm reference assessment, we kind of do the bell curve. Okay, the super high achievers would be on this end, getting 100%, and the very low achievers would be over here not doing very well. In the middle is the mean, or where the average of the students would be. So how do you measure against other people? This is how GREs are assessed and things like that. Criterion referenced is different. You want most people get a passing score or a good score. This is like your driver's test. You want most people get a good score unless people will fail. Our job in education now with many of the testing is to hope that most people in fact do get a good score and do pass. So what are some of your considerations to take into place? What is the purpose of your standardized test? Diagnostic, to figure out what the problem is. Formative, to figure out how you can instruct better, or what the learner needs to do to improve. Or summative, they need to get a grade at the end. Congruence, does it match all the instructional objectives, match methodology, and reflect the standards of whatever your standard is. Scoring weight, how much each question will be worth. How much will each question be worth? What % of the total will it be? Does it match the instructional emphasis? Norm reference, criterion reference, and self-reference. You need to think, will you grade on achievement, effort, or improvement? You have to decide as the instructor. In some cases, but in some, it's made for you. How else do you need to consider these things? If it's individual, how many changes do you plan to make on your assessments? How do you compare? What are the different types of evaluations? When you're doing group assessments, if you do group work, what is the role of group grades? And this is even standardized. Non-academic considerations, participation, lateness, attendance, effort, privacy. To what level will this be taken into consideration? Yes, even with your standardized test, because grading many times winds up being based a lot on standardized test. Not all the time, though. So other considerations for your standardized test or in your grading. Will you allow students to redo their work? Will they be allowed to redo the work and show how you assess when they redo? When a student is involved, how will students be involved in the grading and their self-assessment? Clearly communicate to parents, students, and involved parties. Communication is key whenever you're assessing, and to what extent. Teachers often do want to take into account different learners, but you also want to think about how will you change assessment for your online students. Do you need to adjust your style of assessment or your assessment style? Please think about that, and this is something you will need to think about for more than 5 minutes. So now we're getting into the high stakes testing. Wow, this is the hard part. Your district may require you to do such things as complete parallel tasks, test preparation, practice anchor tests, adopt an anchor so that everybody does it, alignment of your test to state tests, diagnose students' needs, and interpret state test results based on high-stakes tests. So what are some of those good characteristics? Directions are clear. The test is matched to the curriculum and the instruction that has occurred. There's several types of items that are utilized, including short or long essays. There are enough items to be reliable, not just a few. There's a variety of thinking included, and test review is for clarity and time restraints. Good tests. There's no pattern to correct answer options. Clearly a correct answer to the question. There are no cues in the questions or tests to assist the students in guessing. There is potential bias in items addressed. So in other words, in every single test, every single assessment, there's always bias. But we hope that cheating is discouraged, the testing conditions are controlled, and the vocabulary is appropriate because everybody is doing the same thing. Now we're going to go over the type of questions, true and false. At this point, I'm going to go over the questions, but also I'm going to give you some time just simply to read the possible responses that you can have to these different things. So take a moment. True and false. So you see here, true and false is pretty simplified. It can be easy. It can provide a variety of material in a short amount of time. And it's fairly simple to grade. Here's some guidelines. Avoid specific determiners always and never. Avoid a double negative. Avoid complex sentence structure. Place critical elements at the end of a statement. Approximately equal amount of true and false. Avoid making true items longer. We tend to do that. Next, multiple choice questions. They're difficult to really construct well, but they're very easy to correct. You can test higher levels of thinking, and in one of the other courses we talk about tiered questions, which are very valuable. Can measure a variety of content. Now, some guidelines. You put most of the wording in the stem, that's the part at the top. You use clear, concise language. Make wrong answers plausible, okay? Make distractors. So that's kind of unlike true and false, okay? You want to very correct answer positions. In other words, sometimes people always put the correct answer in C. That's not a good idea. Put them in different places. So what are some guidelines? Make STEM positive and limit 1 to 1 element. In other words, don't ask 2 questions and only have 1 answer. Make responses and STEM agree grammatically. If you're using past tense, try to use past tense all the time. If you're using present, use present tense all the time. Future, future all the time. Use none of the above and all of the above sparingly, but you can use it. Makes distractors approximately the same length as possible. So if it's the wrong answer, make it about the same answer as the other ones because you don't want students to waste their time. Okay, sorry. Matching question guidelines. Your matching questions here, they're easy to construct and they're easy to correct. You can probably use more content in there and you can measure higher level thinking. Some ideas. Include only homogeneous material, meaning that everything is surrounding the same concept. Here's a little clue, use unequal number of stems and responses so that there's one more on one side. So it maybe have more responses than actual stems. So they have to choose a little bit more and they can't guess as easily. Indicate if a response can be used more than once. Put shorter items on the right, longer items on the left. And that's simply because we speak English, and in English we tend to put our longer things on the left. So, and the other is fill in the blank or completion questions. They're easy to construct, they're easy to create. Just so you know, on computerized tests, they can be a little bit problematic because spelling is always taken into account. So oftentimes it's a little bit easier in paper pencil. It generally measures recall. You can do higher order thinking, problem solving, but it is a little bit more challenging. And also it's better in paper pencil, at least currently. Guidelines. Think if there's more than one answer. Try to include higher level questions. Be certain that the placement of the blank does not confuse the student, and consider a word bank. That's a good modification, is have a list of words so students can choose from them. Essay questions can also be on standardized tests. They're easier to construct, test higher levels of thinking, but they can be time-consuming to score, and the reliability can be an issue. And the legibility, length, and writing style may affect the score, because how somebody says something or the vocabulary used will often help or think the teacher will interpret the student's answer differently. So, what do? Ask for explicit responses. Give them some examples if necessary, bullet points of what to include. Consider using more than one question with short answers. Use a rubric to assess. This will help the reliability. Do not use options or choices unless they measure the same content. Online test. Online tests can also be very helpful. They come with a course management system. They usually take lots of time to build, but they should be easy to read for the students, and they often record a score automatically. This makes them really kind of nice. But cheating and security can sometimes be an issue, and so that you have to keep in mind always with your online tests. So whatever kind of test you're going to give, remember that creating a good test takes lots and lots and lots of time. Do not underestimate the amount of time it's going to take. If you take the time to make a good test, you'll get results that can help you figure out how your students learn and be able to organize them better as to what they know and what they do not.